Hello everybody! After playing with this Final Fantasy set, I want to highlight the top 5 decks I enjoyed the most and still play regularly. Let's begin. For number 5 we have Sephiroth, Fabled Soldier. What makes Sephiroth special is he is a mono-black aristocrat commander that synergizes with sacrificing. He activates it on his own and attack and can get that emblem. As the other sources to do that opponent loses one life and you get one life trigger aren't usually in creature form, so they're very vulnerable to interaction. But by making that emblem, if you fill the battlefield with creatures and just start blocking, the opponent can suddenly be losing 10, 12 life and you get lethal quite easily. With this list, what I learned the most is Sephiroth really wants as many creatures as possible. So in any list, I would recommend a high density of creatures because with Sephiroth, you ideally want every single turn to be sacrificing a creature because that lets you draw a card and you're one card deeper to hitting your land drops to having the removal you need. You need 4 creatures to get Sephiroth's activated transformation, but very importantly, he has to be present in the battlefield. Example, if you play a board wipe, you get the multiple triggers and he comes back. I was not getting the transformation. He has to be present. So any sacrifice effect or way to bring him back, make sure that once he comes back, he is present for the last triggers. Other good synergy cards, I would say any way to make tokens, especially the cards that make it each turn, because that means you can get an extra effect. But other really good synergies are either your pingers to ping the opponent and the creatures that sacrifice themselves. The example would be the Fleshback Marauder. Our effect, what makes these pretty powerful is he enters, you and the opponent sacrifice already are at 2 triggers, and if you have a way to bring it back, example Undying Melons and Instant Speed, you can bring him back and now you have the 4 triggers immediately. It makes very good synergies between the sacrifice creatures and our reanimation spells. We get the trigger instantly, Sephiroth transforms, and maybe the opponent destroys Sephiroth, we can bring him back and do that interaction again. There are many. I've tried 2 different lists. This is the non-cleric version and also a version with the clerics. The main difference is that the cleric version have the win condition to sacrifice all 6 clerics to get a powerful demon. The alternative version just runs more value cards. Both work very well. And finally, I was playing with Necrodominance and Necropotence. Both are quite good. There is a bit of a disadvantage if you go for Necrodominance, as if you sacrifice that creature, it will go to exile instead of the graveyard. But the value of drawing as many cards as up to 5, you normally even draw 6 or 7 and discard 2. It's just worth it. This deck really needs to draw the right cards at the right time. For number 4 is Hope Estheme. This is a mill commander and this is my standard Brawl pick. Very few commanders I would say I prefer standard Brawl over Brawl, but milling is one of the few exceptions. Having a 60 card deck really matters in comparison to the 100 card deck, and this is where mill really shines. Hope Estheme is a very cheap commander and has synergy with healing, as you get to mill the cards depending on how much life you healed, and with just general mill strategies. While like this over other mill commanders, if you truly do go for the mill endgame, I would say all my wins I've played with this deck were from milling the opponent's library. If you need to complete the quest, this commander can do it, and has good sticking power in spite of rotation. One of the big changes is Standard Brawl will be rotating quite a few cards, so we're going to be losing Jace and the Teresian Mindbreaker. Fortunately, the new set will also give you one more mill card that can synergize with Hope Estheme, so it's not that big of a loss. I'll say the bigger loss are the enchantments. Prayer of the Binding as well as Static Net will be lost as they give you 2 life, so they were mill and removal. That said, the deck really just works well getting the Mind Skinner either milled and reanimated, Or Oculus works pretty well, as you can discard it. You have many ways to discard and bring it back and just have bodies to block, as this deck really wants to stall and get to that win con. I would say the 2-card combo that works very well with Hope Esting is the Water Crystal. The Water Crystal, every single health you get, for example, from just a 1 Healer's Hawk, you're now milling them for 5. Hope Esting trigger and the Water Crystal plus 4. And you get that Laking condition to 6, and each opponent mills cards equal to the number of cards in your hand. Being able to mill several times. Mind Skinner can help you get there. We have other ways to mill half their library. And we get to that win condition of milling our opponent. And it's very malleable, this deck. You can have more interactions, more card draw, and adapt to the list depending on what is powerful in the meta. Number 3, Torgal, a fine hound. Torgal is a pretty fun commander I enjoyed building, and I really like the aggressive archetype in monogring, as usually if you have been bored with, you get your green quest and you only think, oh, I only can make landfall decks, and you want to try something different from ramp and complete that green quest, Torgal does it very well. It's an aggressive monogreen commander where you play your dogs and wolves, then you play each turn that human, you pump that human and just hit your opponent for lethal. Another advantage is Torgal is a mana generation, does make mana. Now you're able to continuously just keep making creatures every single turn, be hitting your land drops, and getting that exact mana to play on curve. I would say the big synergy, of course, in any green deck are your elves. Elves paired with Torgal means you have quite a few mana. You're able to play Torgal on turn 2, and immediately with that extra mana, with that human, be pumping that creature. Good synergies with this deck, I would say Changelings. Changelings are by far your best creature type. When you future sets, keep in mind which Changelings are printed. You pretty much want every single one of them. What makes them so good is on the turn you play them, they're humans. And on your future turns, they count as wolves or dogs, meaning your next creature will get stronger. The more Changelings get printed, the better Torgal will become in the future. One of the big slight changes I made to the deck after posting the video is I really replaced the Grain Henge effects, as they're okay, but they took way too much mana to cast, as my creatures were large but not big enough to cast the Great Henge for 2, and instead run more overrun abilities. Would be an example, the Storm of Deceit core abilities that not only put counters but also give those creatures trample. As that has been one of the big tricky parts with the deck, is just finishing the game. We can hit our opponent quite hard, but it gets to a point they start having multiple blockers, and with just one overrun ability, we are winning the game. So I modified the deck to have significantly more effects that finish us the game. One of the absolute all-stars is the Filer of Vigor. It synergizes just in general with monogreen, but this specific deck has quite a few 1-drops. It has 24, meaning that you can play the Defiler of Vigor and in that same turn play 2 or 3 1-drops. You pump your entire board, and on its own it's an overrun ability, which is fantastic. And we are the aggressor, so we don't really mind paying that 2 life. And for the combo for tutors, we have Core the Calling with Nature's Rhythm to get the Crater Hoof. These 2 specific tutors are to either get a valuable creature or, in the late game, get the Crater Hoof. Speaking of valuable creatures, we have Kodama to give all our creatures with counters trample and be getting lands. In case, let's say, we have Nature's Rhythm, for 5 we can get Kodama, get a bunch of lands, and in the next turn, Nature's Rhythm, a Crater Hoof. Champion of the Lamholt is another fantastic card for this deck because it's a human. It immediately comes in with extra counters if we play it from hand, and we play a lot of small creatures, making the champion extremely strong. And paired with our overrun abilities, we can make the champion strong enough to have the highest power, and that's immediately a lethal threat for our board. Number 2, Grahatia, Cyan Reborn. I was pretty impressed with Grahatia the first time I saw this commander. I believed it was not one of the more difficult brews, but as when I was building the list and started playtesting the deck, I realized this commander is significantly stronger than I thought, and the Esper Shell fits the theme very well. But with Grahantia, you want to have it on the board, and you want to play non-creature spells as that pay that life and to make a giant token. One of the big synergies that Grahantia has is non-creature spells that just in general make tokens and go wide strategies, because you will make a body from the spell and you're going to make multiple bodies with the non-creature spell, meaning you have such a giant board, the opponent just doesn't know which creature to block and you're always going for damage. Another of the big advantages, if you get to Grahatia to stack and have a giant spell, you're going to make a creature that's stronger than Grahatia, and the opponent now has to decide, do they want to deal with a token or with your commander? What really makes this commander work is the fact he costs 3 mana. In Brawl, that's a very important number because there are many spells that can bring back creatures that have mana 3 or less if you're in white. Grahantia is in white and black, and that combination has quite a few ways to bring your commander back, so you're constantly just not worried if the opponent wants to kill it. Worst case scenario gets exiled? Sure, now they lost one of their more efficient spells, and you're able to cast him later for 5 mana if necessary. One of the best synergies for this commander would be Convoke. Non-creature spell Convoke, able to make a giant board. You're going to be getting a giant creature as well, and now your opponent has to deal with a giant threat, and you can do that for cheap. One of the advantages of Convoke is because you went white already in your early turns, you're able to immediately the next turn Convoke your giant spell and have a lethal threat on board. Of course, we're in blue, so River of Rebuke is an absolute all-star. As we bounce the entire board, we generate a giant creature. And Grahatia offset his disadvantage of paying that much life because you give him, he has lifelink. So you need for paying 5-6 life, we're really paying if we get to hit 3 or 4. That normally would be a disadvantage in other colors, wanting to hit continuously with our commander, but in Esper we have many ways to counter their spells, to remove their spells. We have also ways to make creatures, and really Esper has no problem playing mostly a board with non-creature spell. This list runs very few creatures, and it works perfectly fine. One of the disadvantages of going non-creature spells in a deck is you don't have threats. You can deny and stall as much as you can, but if you're not making a board, you're not going to win. Grahatia has that offset that you can play that mid-range style, deny your opponent's plan, make a giant board on the process, and really threaten lethal. And finally, Season of Burrow works well with Grahatia. Not only are you getting a big creature, you can get a giant board, exile their best permanent, and now give your commander indestructible. So it becomes a fantastic blocker, and you can attack every single turn. Number 1, Terra, Herald of Hope. There's another precon that was precon commander introduced to MTG Arena through Brawl, and Terra was quite the overperformer. I was a bit worried Terra would be good from transition from a commander to Brawl, but Terra just fits the bill. She hits all the right numbers she needs to do, and she is a resource engine, which is very valuable in Mardu. Mardu has many ways to equalize the board, has quite a few removal spells, but they lack in getting that much card advantage. Normally as a price, paying a little bit too much life, or you have to be in a single color to get the most resources. Terra on her own gets that resources. You get to mill the cards, so you don't have to emphasize too much on milling, and you're able to bring back a creature with power 3 or less from your graveyard to the battlefield.
That power 3 and less has no restriction with the mana cost. It can be an expensive creature or it can be a cheap creature. What makes Terra pretty good in Brawl during that transition is there are many spells that are cheap that either search for a valuable card, have a powerful enters ability. The most valuable is removal because we need to stabilize on our early turns. Our opponent's going to be playing elves. Powerful creatures turns 1 to 3. We need to stabilize before that point so that when we play Terra, we have the larger board, and from that point on, we can guarantee a hit. Even though Terra will get flying, we have to equalize the board or we'll just lose the game on the backswing. As for the best synergies would be the evoke creatures, where Mardu, so we get all the 3 evoke creatures are good. We get Grief, Fury, and Solitude. We get to evoke on turns 1 to 3 at any moment we need to. And then when we go for the hit with Terra, we're going to bring those creatures back. And what makes it pretty devastating is if the opponent attacks us, we can block with the evoke creatures, and every single turn we're going to bring that creature back. That's why creatures that have an exile effect become very valuable, or a removal effect is quite devastating to the opponent because removal is not enough. We're going to be bringing every single turn back, and it just becomes too difficult for the opponent to deal with us. Escape is also a really good keyword with Terra because we're milling every single turn. We can play cards like Flage and Kroxa and escape very easily because we need to exile 5 cards. We have fetch lands paired with the mill. It's not difficult for us to get there. And if you're worried, okay, Terra is very powerful, but what if the opponent is continually just removing it? First of all, we have powerful creatures that on their own are very good, and 2, our commander costs 3. The same strategy applies to Grahatia with Terra. We can bring our commander back every single time. And if Terra is eating up all the removal spells and we're bringing her back every single time, that leaves room for all the creatures that exile their permanents. They're not going to get them back. And that really what makes Terra quite useful. This deck has 23 creatures and around 20 plus removal pieces, and there's not including the creatures. So we can very comfortably get a mulligan where we're dealing with literally the entire field, and the deck can be modified quite easily for hand disruption if control's more obnoxious, or any tech card we need, depending on what tier Terra lands on. If you enjoyed the video, make sure to like and subscribe. Comment below of this Final Fantasy set, what were your favorite cards? Thanks for watching.